So, good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Before we begin our conversation today with my guest, her name is Molly DeFrank. She's coming on in a minute. But before we begin this conversation, I want to say thank you for tuning in. It means a lot to me that you're here. I know your time is valuable. Your mothers, your fathers, your aunties and uncles, your grandmothers, and you got a lot going on in your life, mainly probably chasing after children, which is what parents do. But the fact that you're here means a lot to me. So thank you for being here. And for those of you who do listen, we're building an audience. The reason is because I scour the world finding good people for you guys to listen to, and I want them to be heard. And if only I listen to the show or my producer Kenyon listens to the show, that's great. But I want thousands of people to listen to my show because these are great people and they need to be heard. And so thank you for passing on my podcast to other people. I appreciate that. That being said, it is a great pleasure to welcome to my show today Molly DeFrank. She's an author. She has just published a new book entitled Mothering Boys. We're going to talk about that book. The subtitle is Eight Things Your Son Needs from You Before He Turns 10 years old. So what can I say? That's pretty. As children are young, we need to inculcate them with lots of things. So we're going to talk about those things. Molly DeFrank, thank you very much. Welcome to the Hamilton Review.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Bob. So happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. So who is Molly Frank? Well, let me tell you who she is. She's a mother of 6 children. I already like her because I have 6 children. She's also the author of a book called Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. She has been featured on numerous shows, including Fox News, CBS, The Doctors, 1,000 Hours Outside podcast. I know that gal. What is her name? I can't think of her name right now.
Ginny Urick. She's awesome.
Ginny Urick. I love Ginny Urick. She's great. Focus on the Family podcast, Mama Bear Apologetics podcast, and many more. Before she was having children, she worked for Arnold Schwarzenegger, our former governor in California. She and her husband live in the Central Valley in Fresno, California, and she's a leader in women's ministry in her local church. So, Molly, you got a lot going on, my dear, and I appreciate the fact that you're obviously an activist and a go-getter. So congratulations on what you do. So what I like to do with my guests is I like to have them introduce themselves to my audience. So I'm going to stop right here and kind of turn the microphone over to you for a minute and just tell us a little bit about your story. You know, where you're from, what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, why you wrote this book, and then we're going to dive into the details of this book, which again, friends, is called Mothering Boys. It is available out there I presume on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure is.
So tell us about Molly DeFrank.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Dr. Bob, I'm a mom to 6 kids. I grew up in Southern California, went to school in Northern California up at UC Davis, and now I raise my family here with my husband in Fresno, Central California. And I guess I'm a California girl, born and bred. And we have 6 kids. We have 3 boys, 3 girls. We have 4 biological kiddos, and then 2 came into our family through foster care and adoption. It's a busy, loud house, but it's great. We love it. Our kids are ages 8 to 15 and a half. So I've got one in 2nd grade, and my oldest just got her learner's permit. Yeah, it's very exciting. I can't wait actually, because when she has her license, we'll have another driver. It's going to be amazing. But yeah, I quit my full-time work when my 2nd child was born. I knew I wanted to stay home and focus on raising them full-time. And it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. I could not believe it felt like I was drowning. And now kind of moving out of that really hard season with little kids and just trying to keep your head above water, I'm looking back at some of the things that I wish I could go tell my younger mom self. So I really enjoy encouraging moms who are in the trenches and dads too, just that the work you're doing in the trenches really matters. And where I came from, why I wrote this book is because as I'm raising these kids and I'd hear this great advice from people, like you, really good doctors or professionals, and it felt difficult to apply. Like I know this sounds like a great idea, but I'm in the trenches. I didn't sleep last night and I just want to throw on the TV and it just felt like the really intentional moments didn't necessarily matter. We're trying to get through the day, but as I was reading through the research and watching my kids grow, I started to see that parental and especially mother intentionality was critical. It's this critical component that kids today are not getting as much of. So I read the research. There were really two pieces of research I came across. One is that um, a child's worldview is primarily formed by the time he is 13 years old. So it's pretty much baked in. And here's another piece of info that's very interesting. By the time a child that's born today turns 7, he will have spent 1 full year of 24-hour days being digitally entertained. So
Well,
our kids, so that means a 14-year-old will have spent 2 years and probably a little more because the time they're spending each day increases as they get older. So parents, we have a huge job today. It's a little harder than it was probably a generation ago. We're fighting against distraction, but we're trying to raise kids no matter what you believe. I'm a Christian. I want to raise my kids with a certain worldview, no matter what you believe, what you're listening. I know there are things you want to teach your kids and ways you want your kids to see the world, and the clock is ticking. So that's why I wrote this book. I brought in the research. I brought in some biblical encouragement to say, gosh, how do we build up our boys, especially boys? They're falling so far behind. It's wild. The data shows that boys are 2.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled from school. They are less likely to graduate high school. They're less likely to earn a college degree. They're less likely to earn a graduate degree. They're 90% of incarcerated people are men. They're more likely to die by suicide. They are lonely. 2/3 of young men say, no one really knows me. So I'm looking at this going, gosh, what can we do as parents to get ahead of all of these trends and all of these horrible things for our boys? And I found a lot of really good opportunities for moms to do just that. And that's why I wrote the book.
yeah, no, you're absolutely everything you just said is entirely true. And just as a pediatrician here in different trenches in Santa Monica, I see my observation, and I shared this with you briefly. My observation is that boys and girls, certainly when they get to be teenagers, I see a certain amount of intentionality in the girls, in the young women, and the boys are a little more kind of floating out there. They don't think they're clear about where they're going. Now, this may be just the nature of boys and girls in general, but I do think that decades of this idea that you hear these platitudes. The future is female, for example. That's one of them. Or this idea of toxic masculinity is another one. There's another one out there, where you take your daughter to work. What about take your son to work? Well, that doesn't seem to have to be as important. And listen, I have 4 daughters. I want you all, everyone out there who knows me, knows that to be true. My daughters are phenomenally important to me. I love them dearly, but I do see that there's been such an emphasis on encouraging our daughters, and I want that to always be true. But at the same time, we need to also balance. And so, what your observation, Molly, is absolutely spot on. You're seeing an issue which is so critical, so important, and I'm really happy that you're addressing this in your book. And I just want to kind of get into the granulars of your book. Again, the book is called Mothering Boys: 8 Things Your Son Needs from You Before He Begins. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit and read what are the 8 things that Molly is talking about, and here they are. These are basically the contents of her book. Number one is belonging. We're going to talk a little bit about belonging in a minute. Number 2, relationship, how important relationships are. Number 3, authority, the importance of authority in the lives of boys and girls for that matter, but how authority fits in to the life of a boy. Number four is fun. It's okay to have fun. You seem to be a person reading your book. I can tell you have fun reading, just writing this book because it makes me chuckle. Number five is bravery. How do we teach bravery? What is bravery? Number six, tenderness. Number seven, creativity. By the way, tenderness, you can be totally masculine and still be a tender person. You don't have to be this kind of crazy macho person that shows lack of tenderness. I think tenderness is actually as much of a masculine trait as it is a feminine trait. Creativity, number seven, and finally, emotional durability. Amen. Durability, because the world is actually not too kind to any of us. Really, when we get out there into the world, we kind of get beat up by the world, right? And so these are the issues that Molly addresses in her book. So Molly, a couple of things that you said here in your introduction was that there is an all-out assault on masculinity. So can you kind of give us a couple of reasons why you made that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you pointed to some really common mantras that boys are growing up listening to. The future is female. I mean, imagine if boys were saying the future is male. Everyone would be in an uproar about that. But the future is female seems to be fine. No one flinches. Boys are they're falling behind. And a lot of the times, I mean, let's be honest, there are differences between boys and girls. So there's also a lot of value in those differences. There's beauty in those differences. And I think our society has tried to just diminish the idea that there are differences. And it's really powerful when parents can speak life into our kids and really identify those things as strengths. Boys are built differently, they have a different muscle volume as they grow. And I think sometimes we're too quick to just dismiss these ideas that that have been traditional. We're just dismissing them without any real clear view as to what the new idea should be. And I believe that God's design for the difference between male and female is powerful and good. I think that societies have flourished under his God's good design for those things, for those roles. I will say also that yes, of course, you can find examples in the world of people using masculinity in poor ways. And we got to call that out, but we need to build up our boys and show them how to use, if they've got a rough and tumble nature, or a lot of these, maybe they're a little contrary, they maybe that can be channeled into something positive, like protecting the weak, standing up for people, and when in the middle of the night, if I hear a loud noise, I will tell you I'm very grateful for my husband getting up and checking out the noise. Like, I am grateful for the difference in roles. He does a great job with that. And I think that it's really important that we speak life into our boys and that we help define male and female for them, giving them clarity as to the positive aspects of both of those things. So I just really wanted to kind of empower moms to speak into this, speak against people who are trying to tear down our boys just for the sake of having to have been born a boy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's very clear to me is when I see little babies born and I walk into a room and there's the mother and the baby, and then the father's usually kind of trying to sleep because having a baby is really tough on the dads, I can tell you that. So they don't get as much sleep as they normally would, so they're laying there. And there's a radical difference between men and women. I mean, I don't even why we're even saying this, why we're having to say this is almost silly. Sorry, it really is. But I do think that the roles are important, and obviously we want to raise young boys who are strong and who are clear. You mentioned another thing too, Molly, in your introduction, that the culture diminishes the role of family and parents. Can you tease that out a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think that moms and dads, God designed it really beautifully. He designed a beautiful picture of a family where kids get to learn from the strength of a male figure and a female figure. And women are tend to be more relational. We are intuitive with our emotions, usually a little more than men. And men bring that strength. I've heard it said that moms are looking out for their kids right now and protecting those feelings. And dads are looking out for the long term. Like they want to make sure their kids are going to survive out there in the wild. So they're trying to kind of focus more on those skills. And we really just complement each other. So I think it's just really important that we put on display for our kids and our boys the positives of these different roles. Um, and the basically our kids are being discipled, they're being taught by something. Like they are so impressionable when they are 0 to I would say like 14. I've heard it said that 4 to 14 is this magical window of influence that parents have on their kids because our kids
Yep.
still think we're really cool. And we exchange the most amount of words with our kids. They think we're amazing. If we like something, they like it. So I mean, you don't really have to look any further than if dad likes this football team, I guarantee you the son is wearing that same jersey. So it's really this important window of time that we have to train and disciple our kids in the worldview that we want to bring them up in. And the world is vying to disciple them. So if we're actually handing over a device, they're watching some random influencer, that's who's discipling our kids. So we better be sure that we're using this time really well. It's actually a very difficult time to parent because of that very reason. When I was a kid, I grew up in the 80s. We had a set number of channels on the TV. There were censors on there. There were certain words that couldn't be said. There was certain content that couldn't be out there. And now if a kid has access to any device with Wi-Fi, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to be exposed to truly pornography and even just these worldviews that we wouldn't want our kids to have. So it's just really important for parents to be intentional about teaching and training our kids in the worldview that we want them to have.
Yeah. So you break up these 8 things and you talk about first of all under the category of belonging, which I this is so critical because I think it's so critical that human beings have a sense of belonging. So many people don't. They don't feel like they belong to anything really. But you mentioned the under this same category belonging, you mentioned purpose. And I do think, and we've alluded to it a little bit maybe, but the idea of purposelessness, which I think is becoming more of a phenomenon that I see in boys. Tell us a little bit about why purpose, being having a sense of purpose in life, is important, and why are boys missing that sense of purpose?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I believe that our purpose is that we were made in God's image to glorify Him. And our kids know that because we've taught them since they were young. But if you're not, as families, if we don't take a minute to zoom out and decide what is our defining purpose here on earth and what do we want to teach our kids about that, then we're just going to kind of go through our days and they're going to kind of guess at that. So it's really important to zoom out as a couple and just kind of identify that. It really a lot of it goes back to that the digital media stuff. 8 to 12-year-old kids are spending 40 hours a week on a device. Um, that's a full-time job worth of hours being digitally entertained. And this passive entertainment it's really prohibiting our kids from using their creativity, from exploring what their gifts and their interests and their talents are. So if our kids don't get to experience that boredom and they're constantly being passively entertained, then they're not going to have a sense of purpose. They're just going to think their sense of purpose is to be entertained.
Yeah,
So it's really critical that we assess this for our kids because if all of their free time is spent just being passive. They're not out there exploring. They're not building. We've got future engineers that aren't creating. We've got future designers that aren't designing anything. We've got, all these kids that are just, they're not interacting with each other. And that's just what we were designed to do. So, yeah, it's so important to instill a sense of purpose in our kids. Yeah, I talk about this in the book too. Belonging is such a, I'm sorry, family dinner is such a critical,
Yeah.
easy way to build up that sense of belonging in our kids. Because, and here's the other thing, you know, as parents, we're living in this digital culture too. And the lie that we believe sometimes we're looking at social media is that, oh, it's easy. Look at this family. It's everything's easy. They're having this nice family dinner. Oh, this mom made this nice dinner. It's so peaceful. They're all laughing. No, let me just break it down. Let's just be real. Family dinners are difficult for everyone. They can be. They can be difficult. And so for every 8 noisy family dinners or difficult or these two kids are fighting or they're, treating it like a wrestling match at the table and you're just face palming, for every 8 of those, you're going to get 2 that's like a beautiful family dinner. You're going to have some kind of breakthrough, some kind of sweet interaction. But
Yeah.
all the while we're teaching our kids like, hey, this is your family. You belong here. This is where you can bring your hard stuff at the end of the day, and you always have a place. So that teaching our kids that that family unit is really that initial place where they belong and will always belong is so powerful.
Yeah. No, I'm a big believer in family meals. I think that you nailed it when you talked about the family meals. They are usually chaotic. They are not, they rarely are peaceful. You usually have someone who ends up crying, or definitely we for whatever reason we had a little saying in our home. The milk was spilled every meal. Okay. And when the milk was spilled, we would all look at each other and say, okay, the meal is now official. Okay. We've officially been together because the milk has been spilled. So that was kind of how we knew that we actually dined together, because someone spilled the milk. And they're never easy, but but this is but I love this quote that you have from Anne Fischel from the Harvard School of Education. She says, "I'm a family therapist." Okay, this is a learned individual. I could be out of business if more families had regular family dinners, because so much of the things that I try to do in family therapy actually gets accomplished by regular dinners. And you give a whole slew of things. Tell us. I think this is important to kind of share with everybody. What are the kind of things that are minimized when you actually eat together, or
Oh
what
yeah.
happens?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, even if you start with giving your kids a little bit of buy-in, like you are in charge of setting out the plates, you got napkins, you're in charge of getting the drinks, whatever. They've got some skin in the game. They see that yes, this is a family community. We all work together. We all put in a little bit of work and we all benefit from it. Also, to your point about the arguing and that spilled milk. That's actually a beautiful way to handle that too, because that sounds like a very frustrating situation for mom, but what a great response. Now we've had dinner. But even if one kid is their job is to clean up the spilled milk, it's like when you have a role and you have a job, you feel like you belong a little bit more. So that also helps give your kids a sense of purpose. Another thing that happens is that relational repair. You might, if you're anything like me, you may have a couple of kids who butt heads more than others, and family dinner is a great place to kind of repair those things, or even sharing wins of the day. We love to celebrate or call out a kid who did something great. That's awesome that for a child to know that at the end of the day, they get to share something awesome that even if it's something really small, like these are the people that are going to cheer you on in your big wins and your little wins. And that also helps. We're trying to build, my hope is that when my kids grow up, they're friends with each other. I'm friends with my siblings. There are 4 of us. I love hanging out with my siblings. And I think a lot of that has to do with spending so much time together. And we sure fought growing up, but repairing those relationships after having conflict is just such an important thing to teach our kids. And all of these
Yeah.
things can happen over family dinner.
You mentioned in your book, and I'm reading your book. It says research shows that eating together as a family can lower depression, anxiety, substance abuse rates, and tobacco use. The simple practice of family dinners can create more resilient children with greater self-esteem. I can't say, I know it sounds kind of crazy for maybe some people, and surprisingly, you give a statistic that 60% of families do not have meals together.
Yeah,
That's a big number. It's a big
it's
number.
huge. Yeah, I also, just to encourage you, I don't know what kind of job your listener has, or if you're thinking, gosh, that's not feasible for us. Like, I have one of my readers was sharing that their spouse works many nights out of the week. So they do family breakfasts, because he goes in a little bit later. That's great. That's the same thing. So if you can have a couple of meals together, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, a couple times a week, that's a huge win. Also, with six kids, with all kinds of sports, we get creative. I can't tell you how many times I've packed up bean burritos and wrapped them in foil. I did this last night. And we took all the kids to one of the kids' award ceremonies. My son was getting an award. And we sat outside at the picnic tables and we ate dinner there. And you could do that at baseball practice, or there's so
Yeah,
many ways to don't put so much pressure on yourself that it needs to be perfectly gourmet and dialed in. Grab a pizza at Costco or rotisserie chicken.
yeah.
Make it easy if you need to.
So yeah, it's not always need to be a Norman Rockwell picture because those are rare moments actually, no matter what.
Exactly.
We keep on trying to have a Norman Rockwell kind of look to our dinner. It never works. I mean,
No.
some kid falls out of their chair or something. We did have one child who routinely fell off their chair. I don't know how they did it so much every time we had a meal, but that was one of our other things we had. You mentioned under the category of relationship, you talk about eye contact. This is so critical because I think that when you're talking, you're looking at people. I think this is one of the things we're dealing with now in our culture, the Zoom culture we live in, is we don't look to look at each other eyeball to eyeball. So tell us about why eye contact is important.
Oh, it's so critical. And a lot of these things you're going to notice go back to just this digital age we're living in. Our kids are spending so much time looking at a screen that they're not getting eye contact. And when we do have to make eye contact and talk to our kids, I want you to think about, how often when you are making eye contact with your kids, is it to direct them to do something or
Yeah,
correct some behavior you don't like, versus just connection. And that's where the real relationship building starts, is that eye contact where you're not asking for anything, you're not telling him to do anything, you're maybe playing a board game, or eat that family dinners, those get accomplished too. I had a really interesting thing happen. When my husband and I became foster parents, one of the trainings was talking about how a lot of these kids in foster care, they don't get early eye contact from a primary caregiver because of neglect. So the parents aren't around, they're not getting, and babies are, the design is that mom is holding them and nursing, and mom is looking in their eyes and the baby's looking back. And that's a building block of that's, they're learning trust, and this is my person, this is my mom. And when kids go into foster care who um, didn't get those things, there's an impact, and it's really sad. But one of the things that the social worker was saying is you can actually go back and give that to your kids as they're older, these foster kids that come in, just play board games with them. And they introduce these games. And that was really mind blowing to me, thinking, wow, this is such a critical piece of such a nutrient in a child's brain, is that relationship building that starts with eye contact, that says, eye contact is just showing our kids, I like you. I'm interested in you. I care about you. I want to
yeah,
know what's on your heart. Tell me these things. And these, you guys, uh, this is a superpower that parents have, because your kids already think the entire world of you. So it's such a simple, these are all really simple things, simple ways for you to just give your kids so much love that they will use for the rest of their lives. It'll make them more secure. It'll make them help avoid that sense of loneliness in the future. It'll help them create their own relationships with peers and significant others as they get older. So it's really critical.
yeah. No, it really is, and that's one of the things that I share with my doctors in my practice is that it's so critical when you're dealing with patients. When you go to anybody and they don't look at you, or you feel like they're just shining you on. And I think that when you learn good eye contact when you're a child,
Yeah.
okay, you don't necessarily, I mean, yes, you can learn as an adult, but it takes more effort to learn anything as an adult. But I think that this is so critical that you're actually giving them your attention. And I think that there's an affirming nature to that. And mothers, listen, mother, you mommies love these kids like crazy. I mean, you guys fall so desperately in love with your children. It's one of the sweet things I get to see on a day by day basis. And I always ask my mothers in a joking way, I said, so do you love your kid? And they look at me like, do I love my kid? I mean, I will bleed for this child. I
Yeah.
will go to my death for this child, you know. So it's very cute. You mentioned also conversation. How do you converse with boys?
Oh man, just that's a great question. And I also want to acknowledge really quick that there just because boys and girls have differences doesn't mean that all boys are wired the same. I have three. They are all three are wired completely differently from one another. So, one of my boys is incredibly chatty. I've got another boy that you got to kind of coax out of him what is on his mind. So there are all kinds of ways to chat it up with boys, but I really encourage moms to meet them where they are. So, one of my sons was really into this game that he was playing, and I sat down and I was like, "Well, tell me about this game." And it was such a sweet time because I truly didn't genuinely care about the actual game. I just cared about my kid. But if I was when I was willing to just take a minute and not think about everything I had to get done that day and just really listen because I cared about him, his eyes lit up in a way that I hadn't been taking the time to notice before. And it just formed such a great connection. And what I've noticed is that when I do listen to the things that they actually care about, whether it's Pokemon or, whatever random game they're into these days,
Yeah.
when I actually listen, it just opens the door to them. It builds that trust. Um, and then they're willing to trust me with those bigger things, really.
Those deeper things. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that, I to my wife's credit, my wife Leslie, she's been very intentional, and she has very sweet relationships with all of our children and who are now adults. And she does talk to them. You know, she's better. I have to say she's better at that than I am in many ways. So I do think that relationship with mothers in particular, because we are kind of talking about moms and their impact on boys. I love your chapter on fun and humor. Tell us why you included this in the eight essentials that you need to teach a kid.
Yeah, because, life is full of lots of tedious responsibilities. And if you can teach your boys to bring the fun wherever they go, they're going to have a better life. I really believe you can find fun and funny in almost any situation. And it really creates a depth of spirit in a human being. And also, if you're listening and thinking, okay, I've got like a 4-year old and the only thing he finds fun or funny are words that belong in the bathroom, I would say, well, welcome to the club, A, but B, it's our job to help educate their sense of humor too. So, it's also not going to be a one and done thing where, and you know this if you're a parent, it's not like you're correcting something once and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'll never do that again. It takes years and years. So, just be encouraged as a mom or dad as you're trying to instill these things in the hearts of your kids. Just be patient. We're in it for the long haul. We're conditioned for instant gratification too. We're also watching these Instagram reels. They've got the shots are cutting every 2 seconds and our attention spans are shorter, but really it's such good work that we're doing. And if you can bring in a little fun, one of my kids invented a game to clean her room actually, and to try to motivate the younger siblings to clean too. And I couldn't believe how well it worked. I told them to clean their room, and usually there's a lot of resistance and it takes a long time. But I came back and it was clean really fast. And I said, what did you do? How did you figure this out? Everyone's working together and everyone's happy. And she said, oh yeah, I made all of the stuff on the ground, all the toys were like these devices that were going to detonate if we didn't put them back into the bin in time. And so they made it fun. And, honestly, your kids are going to be more likable if they can have fun, they can roll with the punches. This is just a good quality to have really in a friend, in a spouse. It's a gift that moms and dads get to give our kids. So bring the fun. Honestly, you can use Chat GPT to look up dad jokes. I do this all the time. It's so easy. It's so fun. So yeah, it's
You're
just so
cheating,
fun.
dear. You're cheating. But anyway, I get it. Okay.
It's great.
It's great. I want to go. There's one more category. There are a lot of these are all great categories, but I'd like to have you talk. So you're talking about bringing up boys, and boys need to be brave. Bravery is one of those things which I think is you're referring to your husband about the loud noise at night, and your husband being the brave one goes out and tries to figure out what it is. Tell us about bravery and how that seems to be almost like how do you inculcate bravery into a person? Because bravery seems to be something you either have or you don't have.
Yeah, well, I think we need to allow our kids to take risk. The more risks they take, the more they grow in self-confidence and the braver they're going to be. So we are raising kids at a time where parents are very risk averse. We're really coming out of, a time period where parents just wanted to protect our kids from everything. And so um we didn't want to let them, jump on trampolines or all the things or even go knock on the neighbor's door to introduce themselves. We were just so scared, but this is what kids need to grow and they need that to build self-confidence. Um, this was really interesting. I came across this thing where um, they started identifying a new condition they called virtual autism. It's where they thought they had autism, so they would diagnose it, and then they realized upon closer scrutiny, it wasn't autism. It was just that um, these kids were not hanging upside down from the swings or climbing trees. They weren't doing all that um, sensory play. They were just sitting in front of an iPad. And so when our kids aren't taking these risks and they're not trying new things and having all these experiences, they're not going to grow in bravery. So, you know, I think we should be more stressed out about that versus a
Yeah.
broken arm once in a while. We've had several broken arms and the kids heal, bones will grow back. They'll be okay. But we really need to look at our kids' character and what kind of strengths are we really trying to develop in them, and then how do we come alongside them to cheer them on. So
Yeah.
for some kids that's going to look like, well, gosh, can you use this rough and tumble nature in a great way versus to tackle, your little sister? Can you use it to protect? When you see someone getting hurt, can you use it to block someone? Or there's just so many ways to, instead of squashing our boys in their wiring, to kind of redirect and say, ah, gosh, I see that you're wired to really be active and to like, let's put this on the right path so you can channel it for good. And I think bravery is one of those things
Yeah.
that especially our boys need.
I like your subtitle here. You say risk is good, ride the skateboard, jump from the high dive, try out for the team. These are all good examples of riskiness that, some parents that, don't try out for the team because God forbid you may not make it. And if you don't make it, you're going to be broken and you're not, all this stuff. No, I love that idea. No, go for it. And this is something that I think that boys need to hear. Girls need to hear it too. I mean, it goes both ways. Well, listen, Molly, this conversation could go on for a long time because I'm enjoying it. I love what you have to say. Friends, she has written a beautiful book called Mothering Boys, 8 Things Your Son Needs from You Before He Turns 10. Um, I really encourage mothers and fathers who have, this is not for moms only, this is for uh, men, fathers as well. So I strongly encourage you to find this book, read it, especially if you have young boys, because this is something that we all need to hear. We need to be encouraged to do this. And Molly, thank you for taking the time to write this book.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dr. Bob.
It's been a great pleasure. And friends, thank you guys for tuning in to the Hamilton Review. Until next time, be well. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.